of people. 53 My teachers. Kim, Jinmi. 1. Elementary school days. When I was in the first year of elementary school, the teacher changed in the first and second semesters, and I remember that the first semester teacher was very feminine and docile, and especially wrote beautifully. In the second semester, the homeroom teacher was big, loud, and had a lively handwriting, so I thought she was very different from the first semester teacher. The second grade homeroom teacher was a male, but one day, my mother gave me a very pretty pink dress. I was nervous because I was dressed differently than usual, so I pee on the chair. And teacher telling me to just go home. The teacher wiped floor with a mop. The third grade teacher was a grandmother, but she had a very strong voice. In first and second grade, I was not able to speak properly, but I became a good presentation student in third grade. I think my homeroom teacher was a big influence. The fourth grade teacher is someone I will never forget. At the time, the teacher's daughter was in the fifth grade at our school, and she sat next to teacher in our classroom almost every day and received her tutoring. And almost every day, mothers came and went in and out of the classroom. A new flower bloomed every day in the school table vase. One day, the teacher banged my head on the blackboard for not cleaning it properly. It felt like my eyes were going to fall. Then she asked me to bring my mother. I saw my mom crying and the teacher told mom to come. The next day, my mom went to school, and from then on, the teacher started stroking my hair. But soon after, violence started again, and at that time, not only me but also the children whose mothers did not come to school were beaten by teachers every day. 1 year was hell. The fifth grade teacher is so quiet and so nothing compared to the fourth grader, so I can't really remember how the year went by. The sixth grade teacher is also unforgettable, grandfather teacher, who was transferred to our school after working at a famous private school until almost retirement. He is close to retirement and I do not know why he came to public school. At the time, my teacher used to swear a lot in Korea, but it was difficult for me to understand as a young child. I think he thought we could understand because we were in 6th grade. We children were worried that teacher wouldn't be able to play the wind organ in music class because he was grandpa's, but fortunately, he played well in each music class and enjoyed the music class. One day in music class, the teacher said that we should study math instead of music today, so we were very surprised. Then, a few days later, the principal came and said that the eldest daughter of the homeroom teacher died. The day we were studying in music class that day was the funeral of the teacher's eldest daughter. 2. Middle school days. When I entered middle school, I was surprised that the homeroom teacher was nowhere to be seen except during the ordnance, ritual, and class hours in charge. It was interesting to take classes with other teachers. My first grade teacher, he was an English teacher, and he said he had worked for a long time at Busan Girls Middle School. My sophomore teacher, she was a Korean teacher, and she was from Daegu, and she said that she had a rough Busan dialect. At that time, there was a classmate with kleptomania in our class, and she was a loner who never talked to her. I talked to her and listened to her, and teacher said to me should lead the class because the teacher looked good on me. She was also an English teacher as a third grade teacher. The teacher's son was a kindergartner, and one day he came to play and the teacher asked who the prettiest of these older sisters was, and the baby pointed to me. 3. High school days. As soon as I entered high school, I did what I called night self-study, and I didn't get home until 10 o'clock at night. Pack 2 lunches and go to school at 7 a.m. 10 p.m. school. At the time, I wanted to watch a children's cartoon called Sand Fairy Windmill every evening, but I haven't seen it since I graduated from middle school. The first year homeroom teacher was a Korean language teacher, and she was in charge of our class the first year she transferred from another school to our school, and she kept talking about the previous school. I was reading Gone with the Wind during the self-study class at night, and the teacher stole the book, so I went to the office the next day to find it. I was the accompanist at the choral competition that year, and every hour of every day I had the children practice singing. We were given a pencil as a prize for encouragement, and the homeroom teacher gave me another pencil to say that I did a good job. In my second year, chemistry teacher was my homeroom teacher, but one day I was so sick that I went to the hospital and called the school on my way late to school, but another teacher in the office answered me. Homeroom teacher scolded me for coming late, and I was punished for suffering from a high fever. At that time, fortunately or unfortunately, I went to a girls' high school that was a 30-minute walk from my house, but on the way to school, there was a residence or a villa of the then president, so I was often late because police officers stood guard and blocked the road to go to school. It was embarrassing. We were late because the road was blocked, but the teachers scolded us. Especially this year, guests came to the villa so often that we were more late every time we turned around. And this year, as every day went by, Molotov cocktails and tear gas bombs exploded in the demonstration, so it was even more difficult for students who walked to school like me. While walking, I drank tear gas while avoiding Molotov cocktails and tear gas to and from home and school. The third grade homeroom teacher was a math teacher, but as grandfather, he didn't really care about us and only taught classes. He didn't pay much attention to guidance. When I was writing the application, my mother came empty-handed. When I was writing the school application, a student who studied less than me applied to a school that was better than me, and I applied to a school that was worse than my grades, but my parents didn't say anything. 3. Department of German Language and Literature. I didn't go to the school my high school third grade teacher wrote for me, and I didn't like it, so I just studied at the level of receiving a scholarship. The professors were different from the elementary, middle, and high school teachers, so a researcher. I didn't have much fun and graduated after completing teaching qualifications and teaching practice. I couldn't find a teaching position because there was no place to find a German teacher. 4. During the entrance exam lessons. After graduating from the Department of German Literature, I studied organ at the Religious Conservatory in Seoul to prepare for the entrance exam to the music college. This was a place where they taught church music back in the days of religious music. After a year had passed, I said that I wanted to prepare for college. Would I have prepared a year earlier if I had already told the teacher? After completing 2 full years, I received entrance exam lessons. At that time, I went every day to practice the organ, and the director of the conservatory told me to pay the practice room fee, so I paid 20,000 won each month in addition to the lesson fee. 5. Department of Church Music and Times. I couldn't get to the Y University I wanted, and entered the S seminary. Still, I got to study what I wanted, so I studied to death. However, since I was not a Protestant, there was some religious persecution in the dormitory and in the department. Even if they didn't say anything in front of me, they were muttering from behind because I would overwhelm them with my skills. Still, I was the highest grade, so it seems that the professors and instructors paid attention. The problem is that I was better than their students, and I was hated by them. There were students who openly called heretics, and there were instructors who gave difficult assignments only to me. Still, the professor who loved me, the dormitory superintendent, and even an Anta student who was older than me introduced me a man, all 3 of whom were pastors. I'm not a Protestant, and I didn't want to become a pastor's wife. Rejected all. The problem is, since then, the dormitory sisters have been scolding me for asking why the pastor's meeting is coming in, even though I'm not a Protestant Christian. There was also an older sister who couldn't sleep and bullied me all night. I was bullied even in my department, but it was really hard for me to be bullied even in the dormitory. Still, I studied hard and reported on the worship service, so I received the Worship Service Award and the top graduation. 6. Church Music Research Institute. After graduating from seminary, I came home and attended the Church Music Institute while receiving treatment for my injured right hand. This is a 2-year course, and there were dozens of students at the time of admission, but when we graduate 2 years later, only 4 graduates, and the school was closed with the production of the first graduates. I was the alumni representative. The teachers here were all Catholics and priests. It was unfamiliar for a man called the priest to drink and smoke. In a Protestant seminary, drinking and smoking was expulsion. A pastor who doesn't drink and smoke but has a wife and children, and a priest who is tired of drinking and smoking alone without his wife and children. I believe that science and religion should not be linked. I just studied hard. 7. Nun days. Shortly after graduating from the conservatory, I went convent. I thought it was the ideal utopia I was aiming for. There are things to keep in mind because it is a place separated from the world. School, religion, area. These 3 stories are forbidden. So I don't even use dialect. I had a hard time controlling my dialect, so I was almost dumb. I murmured that using a dialect was vulgar. One day, they asked me to write down my academic record, so I wrote it down, but it seems that my colleague stole it. And the decisive event. We drank tea as a group and it was bone china. Made in England. It was written. The colleague who stole my record saw it and proudly said that it was made in China, so I corrected it by saying that it means that it was British bone porcelain, but no one around me was convinced that it was made in England. I wanted to. I shouldn't have talked about school or academics. At that time, sparks flew in the colleagues' eyes, and the colleagues had been doing well until then, but from then on, the bullying began. Even when I was making a Christmas card, I couldn't write it in English. It had to be written in Korean. Anyone who has served in the military will understand how hard it can be to be bullied in a closed space. What would happen if only one person was bullied in the military? Anyway, I had more enemies there day by day, and it was getting harder and harder to live. At first, the senior nuns immediately above them bothered me, but gradually the nuns above them. Later, even the grandmothers bullied me. For example, the colleague for not being able to read the sheet music becomes the conductor, and I am the accompanist, but the sheet music disappears. Whether the sheet music has changed. The instrument is broken. There was no back part of the sheet music during the accompaniment, so I had to stop in the middle. Kettles disappear when working in the kitchen. My clothes and shoes are torn and ruined. The light in the shower turns off when I take a shower. There are graffiti on my bedding. If it's my turn to do laundry and I do the whole laundry and hang it up, it's all lying on the floor. The moment the laundry is thrown away is a fact I have seen with my own eyes. When someone else is on duty, only my laundry is dirty because it is not washed. I can't eat snacks because I'm the only one who can't call during snack time. I have a peach allergy, so they tell me to eat peaches as a snack. When I eat snacks, I am the only one who gives spoiled things. I was so stressed that I couldn't chew properly because all 24 of teeth were rotten, so they told me to eat dried squid every day as a snack. When I work in the fields in midsummer, I'm the only one to work in the scorching sun. I said I injured my right hand, so when lifting a heavy load, I have to lift it in the opposite direction. The 2 of us were carrying it, but suddenly she let go of her hand, so I was the only one carrying it. I'm the only one doing the hand wash duty twice in a row. My legs were torn because they order me to leave the road and go to the forest. I went as a group, but only I could go back and bring something. I lived like a fool, but every time, I was framed for bragging, cursing, and pretending to be pretty. For 10 months or so. No matter how hard it was, I thought I had to die there. So I endured persecution thinking that if I died from all pains, I would go to heaven. That is, I did not come out on my own feet, but I was driven out. I thought that if I left there I would go to hell, so after I came out, I stayed at home praying all day for several years. 8. School instructor days. After living and praying for several years, I realized that it was not because I was converted and went to hell, but because heaven saved me from fear of dying in a living hell. After that, I did not lead a religious life. And then I made up my mind and found a job. The only thing I knew how to do was study and learn, so I found a place to teach. Music Academy, Grand Mahangil Academy. I worked at an English academy, a math academy, etc., but as an academy instructor, even if I worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, there was no place that paid more than 850,000 won. I have taught everyone from kindergarten to high school. I majored in music, but being an academy instructor is not covered by the 4 major insurances, and since it's a 3D business, I had to do cleaning, chores, and even run around the bathroom for young students in addition to teaching students. 8. Music Education Graduate School. As I got older and the director became younger than me, I had fewer places to work, so I prepared for the entrance exam again, but there were theoretical and practical exams in the graduate school entrance exam, so I took piano lessons again. So, I prepared for over a year and went to the Graduate School of National University to apply. Then the school did not accept the application. I asked why they didn't take the application, and the professor in charge of music education appeared and got angry and kicked me out. I was so absurd, I stayed silent, then applied to another private university and got accepted. It was a place where practical exams were not taken, and for a year, I wasted money and wasted effort. Since it is a private university, tuition is more expensive, and since my house was near Tongdosa Temple in Yangsan at the time, the school was too far away, so I rode the bus 3 times transfer. It's a 5-semester system, but what do the professors say? All the professors at the former seminary were Protestants, so even though I was religiously persecuted, but they did not manipulate my grades. And gave me scholarships. Here professor said that I was bragging when I made 7 works, so he lowered my score. A professor asks why I came to graduate school when I wanted to apply for a scholarship and had no money. I want to publish a thesis in an academic journal and professor tells me not to look at his face again. The professor told me to go to another professor because the thesis advisor couldn't teach me. A instructor asked me to come to the private lab on Teacher's Day, etc. For 2.5 years, I cried every time. That's how I got my music teacher's license and a master's degree in education. 9. House mother of foreign language high school. I was supposed to be a school teacher by earning a master's degree in education and a music teacher's license, but I couldn't waste time because I didn't take music teacher's seat at all, so I became the house mother of a foreign language high school. Until now, as a student, I had met many teachers, professors, and lecturers around me, but I finally managed to manage the students. Thinking of the many teachers I've been through so far, I thought that I should not leave such an image on my students, so I decided that I would love them and not discriminate against them. I was in charge of my 3rd high school, but only 3rd graders used the 2 buildings. 1st to 10th places used special ward. The rest are general. Classified by academic achievement. The facilities were not particularly good. These students had no life guidance at all, perhaps because they had left their parents at a young age. No matter how much a student studies, they have to live their own basic life, but if their parents didn't teach them or if the kids are weird, but it's more messy than boys. I had to pick up and throw away dirty underwear they had taken off in the bathroom or hallway every day. Over 100 blankets removed and the blankets have menstrual marks. Those parents went in and out of their daughter's room every week without saying hello to me until the threshold was worn out. They told me to clean it myself. Then, parents complained to the principal, and I was instructed. The principal saw me eating at the restaurant and told me not to eat because this is where general teachers eat. I was in charge of the 3rd year of high school, so I was in the dormitory even on weekends, so I only took 2 days off a month, but the cleaning ladies comforted me that it would be better than the 1st and 2nd graders because I took a break after finishing the exam, even if it was difficult. But I was told to work together in the 1st year dormitory and after 3 graders exam, maybe because she trusted me, the original 1st year dormitory manager didn't keep her seat and I didn't know where she went. The other superintendent even told me to come out early and keep the all dormitory alone because she had to go to her swimming pool. The hardest thing in the world is making money, and I thought that was the case. In my spare time, I studied Danso, Sijokang, Analects, I Ching at Hyangyo and Sohun. I learned folk songs and Janggu at the Municipal Cultural Center. After all, living as a student was more comfortable and suited to my aptitude. Teacher Danso, Teacher Siho, Analects, and 3 books and 5 classics, were kind, especially the I Ching teacher, and the class was good. The folk song teacher, Janggu, was a bit strict, and she showed a unique personality of an artist. Perhaps the teacher learned from such a teacher. 10. During the PhD course in music education. With the money I saved as a house mother, I entered the doctoral program in music education at S University. I went to a dormitory, but the doctoral program is a single room. The graduate school dormitory was a new building, so the facilities were good, but the monthly rent was high. I studied really hard because graduating as early as possible was the only way to live. My classmates take 2 courses per semester, and I applied for 4 subjects, the maximum subject, and took 3 subjects as auditorium subjects. I studied until my bones fell out of preparing, studying, and taking classes for 1 or 2 subjects every day. Daily assignments and presentations. As I was preparing for the exam, the day would soon be bright. That's why colleagues only applying for 2 courses. Taking 7 subjects every semester, I was physically exhausted. Other young students also take 2 courses, and I was the oldest student in all of dormitory, but I thought I was taking the most subjects. However, I wanted to finish the semester as soon as possible, so I pushed it a bit. After completing the coursework, I was preparing for the English test and major graduation test, but it was also a test of hell, so I passed it with difficulty. I got the TEPS score 641 and the major test is probably perfect. The problem was that it was a doctoral thesis, but there was no one to take charge of my advisor, so I went to all the professors at the College of Music and the College of Education until the application deadline. The person who barely accepted me by the deadline was a professor of the Department of Education, and I was the first person to be appointed this year, and I was the first disciple. However, I was rejected every thesis examination, and after 2 years, that is, 7 examinations in 4 semesters, I finally passed and received a doctorate in education. After graduation, several music education journals I submitted. Music Journal. Korean Traditional Music Journal. I submitted my thesis to the Journal of Korean Traditional Music Education, all rejected except 2 papers. I submitted to the Journal of Oriental Medicine during my doctoral course was published for the first time. After doing along with submitting a thesis, I applied for professors and lecturers at universities across the country. 11. During library lectures. After graduating, I continued to submit resumes and dissertations, taking several humanities courses at a local library from the previous year. My parents noticed that I was playing at home, so I was fortunate to have a library nearby. Almost every day, I went to the library to borrow books, watch movies, and listen to humanities lectures. Korean, English, music, national studies, etc. Among them, I enrolled in a short writing course last fall. I just enrolled and all the other students wanted to be novelists. Surprised. I didn't know there were so many people who wanted to write. Not all of them were the first to take a writing class, but some were taking it for the second time. For the first 5 weeks, I only watched other people post. I was debating whether I should continue taking classes in this state. I thought it would be impossible to listen to other people's presentations without giving any presentations. However, after 6 weeks, I finally wrote my first short story and released it. I couldn't even write a single line, but I wrote a short story that was over 10 pages, which surprised me and others a bit. From then on, I wrote 1 or 2 short stories every day. There were times when I wrote 3 chapters in one day. I even wrote 7 pieces in a day, experiencing the miracle of writing on its own as soon as my finger touched the keyboard. The problem is that in class, the instructor didn't even read all of my writing, and she humiliated me in front of people by yelling at a scrimming saying who wrote this to read. I endured until the end, trembling with shame, and returned home when class was over. I wrote short stories every day. Every week, my writing wasn't even opened properly. The instructor wasted most of the class time by gossiping about others. In the last week of the lecture, there was a book publication commemorative party containing the students' short stories. At that time, I had completed 25 chapters, and most of the other students had one, and many others did not. So I said I wanted to load more than the one, but I got a call on Kakao Talk asking how many I would like to publish. Instructor asked how many can I publish. I said I wanted to post as many as I could, but she could never do that, and she replied with a ridiculed text saying that she would only be posting one. I didn't go to the publication anniversary party. After that, I wrote every day and wrote People, a compilation of 53 short stories, The Sultan and the Caliph, Pterandat Sequel and Nine-Tailed Fox. However, I am so sorry that there is no one to read me even if I write, and that it is all on the hard drive. Of course, there are few readers. So I realized I have no writing skills. I don't write anymore. 12. Concluding words. I have met many teachers since I was a child. Some were good and some were not. In fact, I think there are few people who have met as many teachers as me. In fact, not everyone who is called a teacher can be called a teacher. Memorable teachers, good memories. Bad memories. I have always had teachers around me. I have not been called a teacher much, but I wonder if I have left good memories for those children. It wasn't just about working hard. I always did my best, but as a result, what was left is still empty-handed and unemployed.